Hi, welcome to Talking and Reading from Japan. I'm your host, Hidemi Woods. I read an episode from the books I wrote and talk about it or talk about anything else I just feel like it. I hope you enjoy with me. Today, I read an episode from one of my books titled An Old Tree in Kyoto. Today's episode is called My Uncle's Jobs. This is about my uncle's unused business cards that I found in the drawer one day. My uncle's jobs. I lived with my uncle until I was 80 years old. He had drifted from one job to another since the time long before I was born. He once started the soft drink business with a relative and his friend, which failed. Then he started the bathroom floor pads business with my other uncle, which also failed. As my grandfather couldn't stand to see his financial aid wasted anymore, he had my uncle hired at a Honda used car dealership by a family connection. Now that my uncle got a steady job with a fixed income, my grandfather was so happy that he placed a large order for my uncle's business cards at the print shop, which, by the way, was run by his brother-in-law at the back of our house. Sadly, though, my uncle quit the job after several years without any consultation. He found a new job at a gas station, got married, and left our house. One day, I was playing alone in the living room and doodling. I ran out of paper and began to rummage the drawers. I found a box filled with my uncle's unused business cards. Even as a little kid, I knew he had changed his job, and therefore those cards were completely useless. I was doodling on the back of the cards when my grandfather called me. He got furious and told me never use them as pieces of paper. It sounded pointless to me, and I asked him what use they had. He replied, "That's not the point. These are expensive and you can't use them." He tucked the box back into the drawer carefully while I was wondering who would use them then. A few months later, my father and I went for a drive to fill up the car at the gas station where my uncle worked. My father looked into the office to say hello to him, but he wasn't there. The manager told my father that my uncle had quit. He was smiling to me back in the car, although apparently he seemed dismayed. We drove back home silently. That was today's episode. My uncle was a funny man, and he was always noisy and joking around, fooled around. And that was quite different. His character was so different from other members of my family. as my grandparents and my father were all quite quiet and didn't like someone noisy. But my uncle was opposite to them, and he was always making them unpleasant and silent with his jest. He's a jester. He was a jester. And he was, to be honest, he was quite annoying, even to me, who was still a small child. He was joking too much, and when we lived together, I didn't quite like him. And he was he was funny, but he was not a serious man, so it seemed he didn't face his own life quite seriously. To him, I think everything looked to him as kind of jokes. And so after he was graduated from high school, he didn't try to look for a job seriously. And so my grandfather always took care of him all through his life regarding his career. In that case, even high school, when my uncle got to high school, my grandfather was so worried about his school. My grandfather thought my uncle wouldn't be accepted any good schools. So my grandfather thought he had to do something for my uncle to get in a decent school. So my grandfather visited the school he himself was graduated from, and he asked the principal of that school to let my uncle get in that school. And so quite the early point of my uncle's life, my grandfather took care of him. So because my grandfather thought it was necessary, especially for my uncle. And he took care of his high school, and after that, almost all the jobs my uncle got were from my grandfather's connections or his acquaintances or anything that my grandfather worked for my uncle to get a decent job. So, and my uncle tried to start his own business for several times. And each time, my grandfather aided him financially. He chipped in some money. But every attempt my uncle made ended as a failure, sadly. And he once started the soft drink business, and in that particular summer, Japan was unusually cool. It was a rare cool summer. So my uncle was out of luck. And he couldn't get enough orders to maintain his business because that summer was too cool for soft drinks. And it was terminated. I remember I used to play at the back of my house. There was my relative's house stood at the back of our house, and that relative's house had a large yard, the front yard, and at the corner of that front yard, there was a huge refrigerator that was abandoned for so many years. And it was a big fridge that was fit in the back of the pickup truck, the business use refrigerator. And I used to play in that fridge. I used the fridge as that fridge was, of course, was long gone, broken, and no one used. It was just abandoned, and it was just left there. And it got rusty and it's old and brownish, and I thought it was no one used that anymore. It looked thrown away. So I was small enough to get inside the fridge, and I played there as by using it as my secret station. It's like in a spy movie, was my undercover center. And at that time, I didn't know that was a sad relic from my uncle's failed business. Also, he failed the next enterprise that was a bathroom pad business. It was a soft thin pads he was trying to sell by taking orders. The business was also run with one of my relatives, and my uncle received financial aid from my grandfather that time too. And it doesn't matter whether it didn't matter whether it was cool or hot. That business failed regardless of weather. And I still lived with my uncle at that time. So there were so many bathroom pads all around our house because they were all unsold and stocked inside our house. So his unsold bathroom pads are all around our house, and we used them as not only in the bathroom of our house but everywhere. We used them as carpets, and also he sold the split short curtains, which was made of the same materials of that bathroom pads. And on the floor, it was the sea of bathroom pads, unsold pads. And every corner of each room, there were split curtains, unsold curtains were hanging. Sadly, it combined with the pads, they all looked so sad and sort of shabby. And finally, my grandfather stopped chipping in his money into his own business, and he found a job at a car dealership, a Honda used car dealership, out of one of his connections, and introduced that job to my uncle, and he took it. And at first he seemed happy to be there, or maybe pretended to be happy there, because I think being a salesman of a car dealership need to be smooth-tongued, good, crafty man. But my uncle was not anything of those things. He was rustic, uncouth. So to me, it was almost impossible for my uncle to work as a salesman at the car dealership. I suppose he couldn't do it, and I guess he didn't sell so many cars there, and he wasn't happy about working there. But because it was my grandfather's introduction, because my uncle used my grandfather's connection, it was hard for him to quit. So he maybe endured a few years, but he just simply couldn't stand it any longer, and one day he just quit. But my grandfather, for some reason, kept my uncle's business cards of that dealership in the drawer as if they were treasures. And as a small child, I didn't understand what use they could be. So to me, it was better to use when I doodle than just being kept there forever. But my grandfather just didn't allow me to use it as notepads, and he, for some reason, really kept it as treasures. I don't know who found a job at a gas station that my uncle got after that dealership. But he started working at a gas station, and just a few months later, as I read, I visited my uncle with my father at the gas station, but he wasn't there. He had already quit. And on that occasion also, none of our family members were informed about his quitting. So my father was so surprised because my uncle had left home because he got married. So my uncle absolutely needed the fixed income to support the family. So my father wouldn't imagine my uncle would quit so easily or so soon after he got the new job. So my father was so surprised, and he gave me a wan smile, and we really, we drove back home in a really sunken mood, depressing mood, and I didn't know what happened afterwards, but I'm sure my father at one point told my grandfather about my uncle's job. So my grandfather must have known afterwards that my uncle quit the gas station, quit his job again. And it's easy for me to imagine how devastating it was to my grandfather. He must have thought my uncle couldn't stay in a fixed job. He just kept drifting. So I wonder how disappointed again my grandfather was that time. Well, that was all for today. Thanks for listening. I'm Hidemi Woods. I hope you come back here again soon. Until next time, take care and be well.